everyone, and welcome to Explorations in Healing. This is month 3, and we're really excited this month to be exploring what we're calling the new healer. This is an area of real investigation for both Raven and me, and I hope you'll join us for this. Ever since people have lived in communities, there have been healers. Those healers have used all different practices, all different techniques, and been in different relationships with the people they've worked with. But as I see it, what's happened is as cultures get more and more complicated and hierarchical, that role of healer has become very, very elevated in some ways. And of course, every time a role is elevated, it's also easy to knock that role down off of a pedestal. And for me, a big part of exploring what it means to be a healer in this incredible place and time where we're blessed to live is to get rid of all of that, all of what we think about healer, like I like to say, healer with a capital H, and to really keep coming back to our experience of what it is to open up and allow ourselves to be conduits for healing. So for me, that's really what the new healer is, a conduit for healing. Raven and I recently learned of a story through the internet that beautifully exemplifies what the new healer is. So I'll tell you about it. It's been around for a few years. This event happened in March of 2010 in Australia. It's just come to our awareness now. This woman called Kate Ogg and her husband were expecting twins in Australia. She was having her pregnancy, and at the 27th week, she went into labor, and that's quite early. She labored for 3 days, and then she delivered 2 babies, first a boy, and then a little girl. And shortly after delivery, the physician asked her what they had decided to name the baby. She said the baby's name is Jamie, the boy. And the physician then turned around with a bundle in his arms, and it was Jamie. And he said, "I'm really sorry. Jamie didn't make it." And Kate and her husband immediately felt the depths of loss. And they were given this tiny body, this 26-week body, to say goodbye to. And the doctor left the room. And she and her husband, Kate and her husband, spent the next period of time holding and loving this child right against their skin, put them right against the skin of Kate, and to say goodbye, to say words that they wanted to send this little baby off into his journey with. And something really miraculous and very startling happened, and that is that Jamie started to have little movement, little exhalations, and movements of muscles. And the doctor had said that might happen, that there would be reflux. It's just life slowly exited the body, there would be refluxes. And at first, I think they listened to that. But over time, as this continued to happen for a long time, eventually 2 hours, as this happened, Kate and her husband, as she tells, looked at each other and started to think, maybe that isn't the story here. Maybe that's not what's going on here. So they sent the midwife to the physician to say, there's movement. It feels like there might be life coming back to this form. And the physician said, no, that's just what happens. Tell them this is just the natural progression, and the infant is in fact dead. And at one point, Jamie took a large breath, and Kate, purely by instinct, all of this was instinct. This was what her being knew to do. She reached down and she got some of her breast milk on her finger, and she offered it to the baby, and Jamie started to receive it. So that was 3 years ago, and Jamie's now alive and well as far as we know. The reason I love this story is, as I said, it's a great example of the new healer. This mother just followed the movement that was in her.
Really, really cool. cool story, an event that happened, and it really, as Amy started to talk about, the key here is that she followed her instinct. Okay, she had this thing that they both parents, they wanted to say goodbye. This is something that's allowed in whatever medical institution that was. So the movement was to say goodbye, but to really say goodbye, to touch, to feel, to really acknowledge in her depth whatever was going on for her around having this amazing being that was in her body, and then letting that go. And then the depth of that, she followed that feeling into a place of just holding and being in love. And out of that arose this incredible miracle from her and his instinctual drive to support, cuddle, be with this amazing being that they thought they had lost as part of their life. And for us, that's one of the things that's so important to understand, is that whatever people think about healing, whatever we think about the modalities or what should happen or what is happening, that the thoughts are so much less important than the feelings and the instincts that we all have within us. We really believe, we really know at a deep level how to heal, each of us. And if we talk about being healers in relationship to one another, we're really talking about how to remind each other of that and activate that in one another and support one another in that kind of healing. So it was really cool to have this story of Kate and her husband. What was his name?
I think David.
And really noticing that so much of the time we have a tendency to think about what's possible and to limit or narrow our own actions in relationship to healing, so many things, but particularly in relationship to healing, to what we think is possible, to what is known, to what should happen, to what we think is going to happen. And because of that, we actually limit our capacity to take action from a natural kind of state that would just follow whatever the flow is within us.
Like the doctor did.
Exactly like the doctor did. Because the doctor knew, the infant didn't respond to treatment over X amount of time, that means the infant is dead. And then refused to even take in the evidence that the child is alive. So the child is now moving around and taking breast milk, and they tell him that through the midwife, and he says, no, the child is dead. I mean, I was listening to this story on the video, and I'm just going, well, frankly, I was going, what an ass,
That is what he was saying.
But it's just,
But we've all been
right,
that way.
Past the judgment around it, it's just like, we take this information in, what we think we know, and then we block everything that is not that. And there's a lot of things we can talk about that we can talk about around how we filter reality in that way based upon the way we think things are going to be. But just to notice that for us, what we're really interested in in redefining healing and having a new healer is that this person that we want to be is one that stays really open to possibility and stays really present with the instinctual movements of the body and of our intuitive response, and that we're always coming back to questioning that, what we know about things. And that we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Kate went to say goodbye. She went to say goodbye to this little being. And out of that deep goodbye arose this miracle of hello, And but still, it was the following through of really wanting to be with this being that created that opening. So we just don't know what's going to happen. And that kind of, I had a story in a similar vein, though not nearly as dramatic as this one, where about a year and a half ago, or a year and 9 months ago, I guess, I had a dream about my grandfather, about my Pampa. And he had been going through a long transition, was not well at all. And I took this dream to mean, the dream was really clear, like, he's dying, go see him. And that was kind of what was going on with the dream, and so I decided to follow through with that, and I came up here and I saw him, and I engaged with him in a shamanic way, in my own way of dreaming, in a shamanic way that I had done a number of times with other people who had passed, who had transitioned out of this life. And I had been on several journeys with different people who had been in that, and so I just thought that that's what I was doing. That's the thing that I'm doing now, is that I get called upon to do this thing. So I'm here with my grandfather, and I engaged from that place. I really opened into that same arena that I had done before, and I got a really clear no. That's not what you're doing here. And I got a really clear no from him, from his higher expression, or however we want to talk about that. His essence was like, that's not it. And so I stopped, and I really, really sat with being with my grandpa. And what happened is he started telling me stories. And he told me a lot of stories when I was on that trip. And then subsequently, we moved up here, and I've been in Colorado for a while now, and I've been able to spend a fair amount of time with him, and he continued to tell me a lot of stories. Like, I would sit with him, and he would tell me stories, and sometimes they'd be the same stories, which I took to mean those were the really important ones. So he would tell me stories again and again, and I checked in a few other times because I'm, maybe stubborn, maybe curious, just around some about the whole thing about, is there something I'm supposed to be doing here, on an energetic level, on some other level around helping him in this way. And I just got no's over and over again, and I also got invitations over and over again to really listen, to sit with him and just be, and listen to his stories. And it wound up being a really beautiful experience. He just recently, over the last couple of days, has passed. And so it's been really the same thing. Like I actually will go ahead and say this, that I had a little experience yesterday where I was really open, and it was not a guiding kind of thing. It was a being with. It was an opening together into light without all of the trappings and the stories and the journeys that had happened in other situations for me. And so it was just really beautiful to notice that.
So this example of Raven's story is also equally to the story of the infant, a perfect example of the new healer. And he had choice points where he could go back into all sorts of thoughts of himself as a healer. And I've been on this journey with him, and I remember him telling me when he had the dream, I had a dream, so I definitely need to go out and visit my grandfather. And so I think this means he's decided to pass. That's what I remember him telling me.
Absolutely.
And of course, that is a perfectly natural way to interpret the dream.
Yeah.
All the dream was telling him was, go to Colorado, spend time with your grandfather. And then I remember after he spent time with his grandfather at that time, he told me, I guess I was wrong.
Yeah.
I guess I was wrong. And of course, his interpretation of what he was meant to do and his story that he had written was wrong. But his movement was not. And that's what we have to keep coming back again and again to is the movement. So there are a lot of places where Raven could have taken on responsibility. And this is something that as new healers, we want to really work with and make space around. Because it's easy, as Raven did, when we've had the experience of something works. This has worked in the past. Mm-hmm. This one thing I've done, in his case it was journeying to help people transition. Some of you are Reiki masters and you have spent time, administering Reiki, and you might have had an experience. You might have had a similar experience several times. And then to go back in with a whole new experience, even with the same person, same condition, same person, next day, next moment. It's an entirely different thing going on. But the mind, and this is so natural. I want us all to just take a breath and realize this is what the mind does. The mind will right away say, okay, I know how to do this, and take over. It's okay for that process to happen, even for your mind to go through that. But to really be able, as quickly as you can, as quickly as you notice, woo, I was making up a story, and the story takes me out of actually being present with healing energy. And a lot of times what I've watched healers do, and I've had myself this experience, is that then it feels like if I have done something in the past, or been present, I should say, not I've done, if I have been present when something has happened in the past, there's a part of me that can get activated and say, well, then I have to. And if I don't do it again, I've done something wrong. That is entirely misunderstanding the whole flow of healing. For me, healing is an energy. We could call it anything. We could call it energy. We can call it life force. We can call it love. It's all the same to me. It's an energy that we are welcome to open up to. And what happens almost immediately when we open and experience any flow of energy is the mind has, I don't know, maybe a second or two. And then it kicks in into understanding that energy and trying to make a story of it. So healing happens in the moment, and it is never finished. It is never a closed chapter. It's never a story that we have a beginning point and an end point. Healing, it just is. However, these stories we have of healing are all these beautiful little stories, or maybe they're traumatic stories, but they always are stories, and they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the healing was complete, and all of that. So where healing actually happens right now, always, it is, the story of healing is always either in the past or the future. And often it's pinging back and forth. So with Raven, it was, this is what's going to happen with my grandfather because I know, because I've done similar things in the past. Mm-hmm. And if he would have stuck to that tight and held fast to his beliefs and his stories and his knowing, just like the physician in Kate Ogg's case and baby Jamie's case, if he would have held fast, he would have missed the opening to the healing. Instead, he decided to just open and say, okay, I was called here and I don't know why. And every time since then, when he spent time with his grandfather, it's been beautiful for me to be a witness to this journey, because what he's gotten to do is sit and hold and do exactly what Kate did with baby Jamie, and that is to just see the light in that other being and remind that other being. So when his grandfather tells him stories of childhood or merchant marines, or when Raven was a child, he was, in that moment, Pampa was returning to that essence of who he was, and Raven got to just hold that for him. That was incredible.
It was.
And if he would have stuck to these ideas of, I'm a healer, I'm a shaman, I came to do this, all of that would have been a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also, Amy pointed out to me that there were other things, like other healings that happened because of the journey that I made. It actually started a conversation that led to a veterans workshop for some of the homeless veterans in Pueblo. It's and started a relationship with someone that I'm just now opening up into doing more work with, and where there's more and more opportunities to do more healing. And so we really can't see, those the big picture of things. The mind wants to make all of these little associations about things that have happened in the past based upon what this current experience is, and we cannot see the ramifications of what's happening. What we can do is be really present and really open and curious and available, to be in this moment with the flow of healing, and to really open into that, the wholeness of one another, and to hold that flow and that wholeness with one another as we move forward. And there's somebody who's a really big exemplary model of that, and that is Jesus. And he was a great healer, and Amy has been pulling out these stories, telling me these different stories around Jesus when he was a healer, because he was really amazing in the same way. And I was hoping you'd share some of those stories. But one of the piece that really kept sticking with me is that he would always talk about the person's own healing ability, their own faith in themselves and in God as being the thing that was creating the healing. That he was just the flow for, that was the channel.
Right. He's an incredible model for all of us, and he's a great example of how that we pedestalize healers, right? And he was continually trying to not have that happen. He is the most famous, I think, well-known healer we have throughout time. Lots and lots of documented cases of healing working through him. And time again, whether it was raising people from the dead, just like Kate Ogden,
Yeah.
or helping people to see again who had been blind, or curing people of leprosy, whatever physical manifestation happened. When people would say to him again and again, he had these followers, he was charismatic, and hundreds of people would follow him because of these healings, because he was so open to this healing flow. And they would say, Master, this is amazing, what have you done? And again he would point to two things. He would say, I didn't do anything. That was God, his language. Some of us would say spirit. And then he would say it was that person's faith. And again, here, faith is another word for me for that same healing flow we're talking about, whether it's love, faith. It was his job when he would come, whoever it was, the woman who had been bleeding for years, and he stopped her bleeding, he would turn and look at this being. That's it. Sometimes touch the being. Sometimes he did it from a distance. And simply hold, not by any trick, but just by a vast amount of capacity to allow love and healing flow to come through him. He would simply hold that person's wholeness. Just like Raven did with his grandpa, just like Kate did with Jamie, to hold the love, the light of this person, and to remind people of that. And that's what I feel is most important for us as new healers, is that we continue to open through I don't know, through the mind, getting rid of the stories and letting them go. They're going to pop up. I really want to say that. I want to make us all comfortable with that. And in fact, for me, the more the stories pop up, it just means the more energy there is. So I know to say, my mind is making all kinds of pretty little fairy tales. That must mean a lot is going on. Let me open beyond the story and get bigger. And that's what this great healer did. Open beyond any story and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when people would try to say, look at, you did this. No, I didn't do this at all, which is the truth. Mm-hmm. None of us is doing anything except opening, which is all we can do. And the most amazing thing in the world, the most amazing gift we can give ourselves, the most amazing gift we can give one another.
We want to invite you to participate in the call that we're going to be doing a week after this video is posted. And on that call, one of the things we'd really like to explore is kind of a manifesto, a philosophical statement of what does it mean to be a new healer, and to just kind of list some of the concepts, the ideas of things that we'd like to remind each other about as we move forward on this quest to be healers, small h. And I just saw one go by that was really beautiful, that I'd love to seed it with and start it with is what you just said, around people around opening past, say it, can you say it again? Past the responsibility.
Opening past all the stories and all the places of responsibility,
yes,
and what we think we know.
To open into possibility beyond that. So there's a place where we could start.
Okay.
One of the things with, and just to explore with one another some statements that we could make to one another around how to hold ourselves as we move forward, how to keep ourselves out of limitation, out of story, out of responsibility in the wrong way, and move into those places where we are really just opening and supporting one another and staying in that
So please join us July 14th. We will be very interactive. We hope to create together a
Yes.
manifesto, as Raven said, of what we want to hold ourselves to, commitments we want to make as the new healers. And because the new healer doesn't do anything on
Yeah.
his or her own, this is
Yes.
a co-creative
Yes.
experience.
Exactly.
Would you bless him?
A little blessing. Just taking a deep breath. An opening in this moment. To knowing that all the work that we do as healers, all of the openings that we create inside of ourselves and inside of others, is for the benefit